Smooch and the Dog Show. Another new episode is coming up tonight.
It's a dog show, baby.
It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show.
You're listening to the one and only Dog Show. Your hosts, Troop Brinson and Smooch Moncrief.
Oh, yeah.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dog Show with Troop and Smooch. And, man, the regular season's over. You can see we're enjoying the nice season as we approach Christmas.
Troop, that backdrop behind you, I got to interrupt. That backdrop is magnificent.
Yeah, I had to get out of the studio and just get it in the living room tonight. Enjoy this. And I'm so glad to be here tonight. And Georgia 11-2 on the season. You folks saw what happened. We don't need to talk too much about dominating Texas again. I mean, I wasn't, maybe not dominating, but it feels like it when you win, when you sweep the Texas Longhorns.
That's
it.
Media. When you sweep. Yes.
Yeah, the media was ready to crown them, and Greg Sankey set them up perfectly. He did, and Kirby called him out in the post game on the field, and called Sankey out. You know, thanks for sending us on the road, and you set us up for failure. And we still sitting on top of the SEC, and it's a great
100%
feather in Coach Smart's hat. And the Dogs celebrated that SEC championship and another overtime game, back-to-back overtime games. And Georgia's just built that way, and they've kind of shown you this year that it doesn't matter what kind of fight it is. They are ready to fight. And they can win pretty, they can win ugly. They're comfortable just beating you down and winning in the fourth quarter. And they've done it over and over this season. And I'm glad to see that, because that's what this edition of Georgia has to do.
Yeah, Troop, I've listened to people try and label this Dogs team. What is it about this Dogs team? Because this Dogs team can win a national title. So what is it? It's not the defense of 2021. It's not the Stetson Bennett-led offense of 2022. What is it? You know what it is, Troop? This team is the MMA Georgia Bulldogs. I will stand behind that. Wherever the fight goes, the Dogs are prepared to fight it there. You want to stand up and throw haymakers? We'll stand up and throw haymakers. You want to go to the ground and get dirty? We'll go to the ground and get dirty. And what it comes out to when it's all over is Georgia Bulldogs, SEC championships, top seed for the playoff, Troop.
And you saw, based on exactly what you said, you saw when Beck went out, and obviously Georgia was going to have to play a little differently in the second half, and they were fine with that. They became a lot more physical. All of a sudden, a team that struggled to run the ball or block for their running backs created space.
Yeah.
They picked up first downs. They threw it to tight ends, and tight ends broke tackles, and they moved the ball. Stockton, it couldn't have been ready. They couldn't have been thinking about he was going to be coming in that game in the SEC championship, but he was prepared. He didn't cost the Dogs with any really stupid mistakes. I mean, he threw one interception, but but he was trying to throw that away, I do believe. But they're prepared for that. And that's the major takeaway. And I wanted to talk about what the takeaways are from this season. Yeah. This was a season that I don't think it's debatable. Maybe the toughest schedule ever for a Georgia team, maybe any team.
Totally agree.
It's not even over. They're still going to play some really good teams.
Right. It's not getting any easier.
But so far, they prove to you, and people who looked at teenagers speeding, and tried to tell you that Georgia had a culture problem, showed you what a culture looks like with a team who is just beset by injuries they had their top three running backs hurt at one point. They had offensive linemen just banged up all across the board. They were missing Smile Munden for a big part of the season. They were missing Mykel Williams, their best player on defense, for a big part of the season. And they showed you what culture is and what a coaching staff who prepares players, develops players, and has them ready to play. And Georgia just persevered. It made it where it wasn't maybe the most aesthetically pleasing season, but maybe in a way it's a very satisfying season as Georgia was prepared for a fight each and every game.
Yeah, and they put themselves in positions to be in a fight, but then they won the fight when the fight occurred, right?
They may have gotten a fight with their hands too low, but they eventually won a slugfest if they needed to.
That's exactly right. And I think that you touched on something that I think is so valuable. You talk about a takeaway from this season. You do not have the season that Georgia has with a culture problem in Athens. You can't. This was a character building season. It was a character exemplifying season. It was a character on display season. The character, the culture that is at Georgia. There is only one town in college football that could face this schedule and face the injuries the Georgia Bulldogs did and still win their conference title. That only happens in Athens, Georgia this year. There is no culture problem. What you see is cultural eliteness from the Kirby Smart camp, Troop.
It really is. And Georgia's season was defined in a large part based on how they played Texas. And this was always a team, it looked like after things got going, this was a team that needed to defensively be game changers defensively. And against Texas, they showed you then when the things mattered the most, Georgia's defense is really good. Now, against some teams that don't really matter, they are in some spots they don't have game records. So if you're not quite prepared, if they're not quite ready for that, it's going to make the game a little tougher. But when the marquee games showed up, Georgia's defense, especially against Texas, maybe that's just a great matchup for Georgia. A lot of folks are saying Texas is the most talented team in the country. I don't really believe that, but it was a good matchup for Georgia. But Georgia's defense, both times, just dominated. And I got a quick stat I wanted to show you. I think Graham Coffey put that out. It said that Georgia had 13 sacks against Texas in these two games. It held Texas to 58 yards rushing on 55 carries. And that was over 120 minutes plus an overtime. And that was this past game. Their Wisner, their running back, had like 180 yards against the rival A&M before Georgia rolled into town or before they met for the championship, SEC championship. And Georgia just shuts that down. Even without Kristen Miller, Georgia just shuts it down. And their best playmakers are out there just making plays. Look very similar defensively to what they did in the first game.
I think you could very easily say Jalen Walker, congratulations, best
Buckus.
linebacker. Yeah, the Buckus Award, best linebacker in the country. And you know how you win an award like that when no one on your defense makes first team all SEC? You know how you do that? When you play your most important game, you're the best player on the field. And Jalen Walker did that not once, but twice. And all of this talk about Texas being excited for the playoff, that's the last thing Texas should be, because all that can happen is that you end up seeing that monster again, and he absolutely owns Austin, Texas. That's his place. Jalen Walker played his best football against the best team when it all mattered the most, and that won him that award. That's going to win him a ton of draft stock, and this team steps up when it needs to against these so-called elite teams. We've seen it over and over, Troop.
And Quinn Ewers played about as well as he could play.
Yeah, I agree.
Without much of a running game. And Georgia made them try to kick field goals. They missed a couple of them.
Right.
One was 50-plus, but the other one was very makeable, and that actually cost them right there. But Georgia had opportunities to score too. But Jalen Walker, I'm so proud of him. And it's a great another recruiting pitch when you can say, okay, we got Roquan, Nakobe, and now Jalen Walker winning these awards. And I'm
Chris
so
Cole, Chris Cole, anyone? Chris Cole?
I'm happy because before the season, we've always saw from Walker was flashes, and the coaches had to make a certified effort. We've got to get this guy on the field and find a way to use him to his best abilities, but keep him on the field. And he got bigger, stronger, and more comfortable as well. But you see a lot of times players don't get used to their full potential in college and maybe going to the pros and they figure it out. But I'm glad that because he was a difference maker. We saw last year the flashes he had was he was making some of the best. He was maybe the best pass rusher we had last season, and now he just kind of branched out and does everything well now, and there's nothing he doesn't do well.
He's a game wrecker. He's just a game wrecker.
Congratulations to the third Butkus Award winner in the Kirby Smart era, and LBU Schumann. I'm sure you got that pen. We love it. But yeah, that's my takeaway as well. Just like you said, a team ready to fight and is prepared. It doesn't get, because some teams, it gets late in the game and it's still close, they get a little panicky. And they're going to do some things out of character that they've done the whole game. Georgia just buckles down and plays better. Mm-hmm. And that's a mark of a champion in another SEC championship game for Georgia. I do want to talk, Smooch, about, because, Beck probably has taken his last snap as a Georgia Bulldog.
Right.
He may be available without surgery to come in a situation where a similar situation, like let's say Gunnar Stockton gets his helmet knocked off. That may be a regular occurrence the way he plays.
Right.
So and have Beck come in there, hand the ball off, or do whatever, And who knows? Maybe Beck comes in the second half of a national championship game and wins it. You just don't know. So if he elects not to have surgery, it may be something. But we need to talk about these two quarterbacks, and we saw what Beck can do, and he's got an NFL arm. Was very inconsistent this year. But I still felt like he gave us our best chance offensively to
100%. Yeah.
To win, beat anybody, to be on. And if his teammates around him play well, then Beck, it could be that championship level quarterback. But Gunnar Stockton, we're talking about this for next year. Okay, well, leading up to next year, spring practice and all that, they're going to have to really get the Gunnar Stockton offense ready to go. It's going to be a different looking offense. It's going to be a lot of RPOs and a lot of tight ends and a lot of running the ball. It's going to be a much more physical offense, which I was kind of looking forward to. We're going to see it early. We're going to get a preview, and it's going to benefit Stockton, I think, as well.
Yeah, so here's where I come down on the whole thing, and we can get into this much more. When everybody on offense does their job, Carson Beck gives this team the best chance not only to win, but to dominate and to excel. When everybody does their job, Carson Beck gives this team their best chance to excel. However, this season, everyone hasn't done their job. We lead serious college schools in drops this year, right? We've had some breakdowns. At that point, you do look to a more non-conventional type of athlete that can do more things. So is Carson Beck? Yeah, Carson Beck led us to where we are. There's no possible way without Carson Beck leading the Georgia Bulldogs, we're looking at an SEC title, and we're sitting where we are right now. However, is with his injury and the fact that he's probably thrown his last pass for Georgia going into this, is there reason for optimism? At the exact same time, there is reason for great optimism because of what Gunnar offers, and that is if things don't go right, if everyone doesn't do their job, you have a playmaker back there, and I'll get into his leadership in a minute compared to the two of them. But right now, going in, there's calls for concern and there's calls for optimism. Both can be right at the exact same time, Drew.
And I'll mention both of those things. There's the reason for optimism and the reason for concern. And I will say that he's not Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett is a running quarterback or a guy who can run the ball. He's twitchy. He's twitchy. He's make defensive backs look silly. Yeah. And Gunnar Stockton's more of the willing to run, willing to fight for extra yards. You got to account for him. He will punish you. Mm-hmm. He'll move the chains, but he's not the guy that's going to shake you and inside the 10-yard line if there's DBs right there in front of you. Stetson could do that. He could show you one way and break inside, and just like a skill player.
There's only one Stetson Bennett, and when the movie is made about that man's life, there's only one, guys. You can say because he was a walk-on, you can dupe. No, you can't. There's one Stetson Bennett. He caught lightning in a bottle and turned into two of the most important seasons in Georgia Bulldogs history. Sorry, go ahead.
So, RPOs are going to be big, and he's going to be a +1 quarterback where you have to count for him, which will help out with your running backs. It'll help out with your blocking. It'll give those defensive ends can't crash down. If they do, they should pay the price for it. And it should be some easy yards, I think, for for Gunner. I do worry about him getting banged up. So far, he looks like a tank, but there's a potential for that, right?
He leaves himself open for sure.
But as a whole, the physicality on this team should increase. It's just a mindset. When you throw the ball 40 times a game and you're pass blocking a lot, the physicality takes a little back seat. And you see that from the run blocking and the running backs getting space. You'll see more space. And so just that mindset, and they got 3 weeks to prepare for it, which is a godsend. They got so lucky. I mean, when does that ever happen? When you have a quarterback get injured and you got 3 weeks to prepare for your next game.
Never happened. Never happened.
So it'll give the running backs and tight ends will be featured. I think you're going to see the tight ends and running backs featured. If nothing else, because whether they're running the ball or short passes, because I think that those rollouts are going to give – he's going to roll out to be able to pass the ball sometimes. So you're going to have those guys dragging across. And so I think that's going to play into that. And so what I do worry about Smooch is the lack of explosives. I worry about lack of explosive plays because we always talk about as an offense or as a team, if you win the explosive game and the turnover game, you usually win. Those explosives are so big because you don't have to drive the field. I worry about the explosives, and I worry about teams inching up and getting closer because they're going to force him to throw the ball down the field in tight coverage and one-on-one stuff. I worry about that. And so he's going to have to conquer that because teams, why wouldn't they? They don't have any game tape on him, but why wouldn't they? He's got a good arm. It's just a little bit – it's a lot slower than Beck. Beck just flicks it. And he's got kind of a slower, more mechanical release, and it takes a little longer. I don't know if that'll play in anything. It could. It'll change your quick screen game. You won't be able to – that game is going to be much more limited. That Beck was superior. Whether you folks know it or not. Whether you get folks know it or not. And folks got tired of seeing these little quick passes, little quick screens. Carson Beck was elite at that because he got it to him so quick. With any kind of cushion, they had a chance to make a move. At the minimum, getting 3 or 4 yards like a running play. If you could get 4 yards on a running play, you're going to take it. But with the additional potential to break it if somebody misses the tackle or they make a move. But that's going to be a little bit different because I don't see that being a strength of his just because of his slower release. And
I agree.
I also worry about the Dogs get down a couple touchdowns. I mean, they'll be committed to their style of game, but it may limit – maybe it will. It may limit their ability to come back from a deficit because they're going to have to move it down. They're going to have to move at a more methodical pace, I would think. And teams are going to – if they see that, they're just going to – they're going to keep you from doing that. It makes Georgia a little bit more defensible, I think. But Georgia there's only been one game that got down early in, and that was against Alabama. And otherwise, I think the defense. That's why it's a complimentary football. Smooch, your defense has got to make things easier. Give us some short fields. Yeah, give us some short fields, and that's the way. 3 games is all it takes. 3 games.
Wow,
national champions. So that's what I think.
Here we are. I'm right there with you. So I literally have on my sheet slower release. Right there. That's what it is. When so many people that are neophytes in terms of their knowledge of college football, they say, who can throw the ball farther, Gunner, Stockton, or Carson Beck? They may be able to throw the ball the exact same distance. We've seen Gunner in high school throw the ball 71 yards, 68 yards. That happened in high school. Carson Beck can unleash some deep passes too. The difference is the release. Carson Beck throws with this fluid quickness and twitchiness. It is an instant thing, much closer to Dan Marino, whereas someone like Gunner throws with a wind-up motion, using his body and his legs, and he can throw the ball really well. But those things take time. And the things that you guys, Troop, you nailed it. I appreciate it so much. You guys have taken for granted. Carson Beck is the best wide receiver screen thrower in college football because he gets the ball and it's there like a missile, and the wide receiver's facing the line when he catches it. It's placed in the perfect spot. Gunner will have to wind up on those. He's got to plant his feet. We talked about that with Stetson back in the day. Stetson had a good arm, but he had to plant his feet. He had to be on platform. Carson doesn't. How does that translate as teams, as you say, get more and more aggressive? And Troop, the one thing I have is that we saw the absolute adoration that Gunner's team has for him.
Right.
What happens? That's great, and that's awesome. He's a natural leader. You can't deny that. It's obvious from looking at him. What happens when he has to press? When he thinks, I'm letting people down, I'm not living up to what my teammates have been. You've said this so many times, like the most popular player on the team is the backup quarterback. But what happens when it's his results out there?
That's right.
Does he press? What do those expectations do to him? Because we saw Gunner get a bad play call. Even Kirby said it was a bad play call. He got a bad play call. He was in a bad situation. He was late. And he threw an interception that, were it not for a clutch tackle, could have made that game look a lot different, because that could have been a pick six. So how does Gunner deal with the expectations? Because this is his team now. I mean, this is his team. He's QB1 next year, barring something unforeseen. Here we are. What does he do with those lofty expectations? He has them for himself. We have them for him. How does he respond, Troop?
Well, I don't think I have unreal expectations of Gunner. I think he's got to play within the team. The team, he's more of a cog in this team than like you would see a marquee quarterback. And if I was thinking, is Gunner Stockton a championship quarterback? I would. It's borderline to me, because we think of those type quarterbacks as the guys who can put the game on their shoulders. Right. And we don't know that about him yet. I mean, he was very highly heralded coming out of high school, but more because of what we've already seen, because he's a football player. He's tough, and he's not going to get rattled. But he's got some limitations, and so he has to play within that, I believe. He may alleviate all of that. We may be like, well, why did we wait? He was ready to go. But we've seen him in a couple of spring games. I feel like we got a good idea of what he does, just the plays they run for him in the spring. A lot of outs, a lot of quick stuff. And he's not going to stand in the pocket and throw the ball, 40 yards down the middle of the field. But that's who does a lot. That's not a play anybody depends on.
Right.
A little 15-yard crossing pattern. I want to see him be able to do that. I want to see him be comfortable throwing the ball in and like Carson, you showed you can throw the ball in a mailbox, and he was got comfortable doing that.
Yeah, he did.
You're going to have to be able to do some of that, and teams are going to make you prove it. So we don't know if he's a championship quarterback, but we feel like this is a championship squad. If the pieces that they've shown us this year, they continue to come together. Maybe this was the piece it needed. Nobody roots for Carson Beck to get hurt. We wanted him to be the guy this year, and he has been. But what if this is the piece that really pulled everything together and made this team play like they needed to play offensively, and the defense it all comes together? And that's being sugary as in terms of a Georgia fan. But we saw how everybody reacted in the second half. We saw the way the team pulled together and executed, and that was something. That was against Texas, and that was a game that Texas. Your starting quarterback. Texas should walk away with that game and win. They should, but they didn't, because Georgia played as a team.
Right. You look at that game and everything. And as a matter of fact, I was listening to people that don't know who Gunner is. By the way, I was getting numerous texts from people. Who is this Gunner guy? And I'm in Alabama, so most people here, they have no dog in the fight, but they want to know what's going on with this Gunner guy. And can he do this? And you saw first drive of the second half, straight down for a touchdown. And at that point, there was this kind of thing that this guy can get it done. He's got to stay within himself. But like you say, is he ready to be the guy that's the reason you win? We know that a backup quarterback can easily be the reason you do not win. Yeah. But can Gunner be and so what Georgia has to work on, Troop, is not putting the quarterback in a situation where he has to be the reason they win. But we may find out. We don't know what we have. You never know what you have till you put the player on the field. We've seen guys with incredible tape take the field, and it looks nothing similar to what the product is. We're never going to know till he's in that situation. But that's the challenge for this team, for this defense, and for this offense. Catch the dead gum ball, and don't put Gunner in a situation where he has to be the reason you win. because we just don't know yet. We're optimistic, but we don't know.
Yeah, this is time for Etienne and Frazier and Rod Robinson, who I heard is 100% healthy right now.
Yeah,
he's gonna have to be prepared to take the hits, and but as a third back, really. But those guys and your tight ends I think they're going to play huge, and I think they can be the ones that you're like. You see the catch that Lucky made on the sideline? It was sensational. That was George Pickens' kind of a catch, man. Please. So they have the talent to do that.
And he inspires that type of performance in his team. I mean, he does. Yeah.
So, and I think it's going to help. Looks like with the time off, Georgia can get much healthier. And Kristen Miller, hopefully with his shoulder, he was such a difference maker this year. And we saw with him getting injured, who stepped up and had the best game of their career. Now people are like, what in the world? Warren Brinson is an animal. He just demolished that defense, interior against Texas. And if you get him and Xavier McLeod played well.
He has shown up out of nowhere.
Get those guys and Kristen Miller coming back on the defense and everybody else kind of getting healthy. And then offensively, your running backs room is getting so much more healthy. And your offensive line, who has, they have been hit hard all year long with injury. They should be over the next couple of weeks. And then Georgia will really start to ramp up that last week before they play against either Notre Dame or Indiana. I'm okay with either of those teams. And so being healthy should be huge. And it'll be a welcome sight to see some of those guys at their potential. Hopefully, who knows, Smooch, what a layoff like this will mean. It seems like Georgia has come out in seasons past with a big marquee game to start their year and been able to dominate. And so maybe it's not like baseball. Baseball is you don't want to have a layoff in baseball. Football is not that big of a deal, I think, because I think more and more about it. And so I have high expectations going into that. That's freaking January 1st. We don't play till like 8:45 January 1st, I think I saw.
Right, New Year's Day that night. Troop, I will tell you that we saw what Kirby's judgment in getting a player healthy can do in terms of ETN. I mean, do you realize every point scored against Texas this year was by ETN and Woodring? Like,
is that right?
I believe that was every point scored this year against Texas. And
we didn't even know that ETN was going to play this game.
Did not know he was going to play. Where in the world when you talk about this devaluing of the running back? It happens a lot in the NFL, but it's happening in college too. Where would this team be? Troop, we sat at the spring game this year and we said, we got something here in this ETN kid. And look at where we are. Where would this team be without him absolutely owning, and I mean owning, Texas this year? Some of those first downs in the SEC title game where he caught a little ball from Stockton with 4 guys in position to make the play and got the first down. Just where would we be without him? That's the value of getting some of these guys healthy right now.
Yeah, the spotlight's definitely going to be on Georgia's running game. I love it. I know Kirby Smart likes it, and we'll see. Georgia just needs to play, like we said, complimentary football. One more topic. This is an off week for us. We got a few weeks before we play football again. Even next week, we really can't talk much about who we're going to play because we won't know until after the weekend, after Indiana and Notre Dame play.
Notre Dame.
So this is the fun part because as football fans, and we follow all the teams, we feel like we got a pretty good, I guess, read on what's going on. And when we said that Alabama, you can't get better. You're not going to be better without Saban.
You don't lose Nick Saban and get better. Doesn't happen. Yep.
But apparently they had the best coaching staff that money could buy, and they were
maybe ever.
So they convinced themselves that DeBoer was going to pick. He was recruiting well, and he had a great coaching record. Even though a lot of that was not in real football, we saw. I mean,
right.
A couple years here and there before in Washington and Indiana, I think. But yeah, we called it. You're not going to. And Smooch even said this. I didn't know if I believed this. Smooch said they were a borderline playoff team. We could probably pull it up if we wanted to look it up.
Yeah.
Smooch said that Alabama was the borderline playoff team. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, there's 12 playoff spots, Smooch. They're going to grab one of those. They might not have the best season, but they're going to get a playoff spot. Alabama will be a top 12 team.
Right.
They were a borderline playoff team. They
That's
were in
true.
there. And SMU jumped them. And Alabama, 3 losses in your first season. And then players are leaving. Players aren't because he's not Nick Saban. You don't have that same mystique to stay.
Yes.
He's just another coach. It's hard to replace a legend. It's impossible in most cases. It's not the brand. You know, you want to say Alabama is the brand and that kind of runs itself. It's not, folks. It can get a lot worse too.
Yeah, 100%. And just today, Justice hit the portal today, right? Justice Haynes,
5-star running back.
5-star running back, a Georgia legacy. We thought we were getting him. Great feet. The only feet, I told Troop this, the only feet I saw better in high school were in Nate Frazier. Great feet. Comes to Alabama and entered the transfer portal today. That doesn't happen under Nick Saban. Just doesn't, guys. And to me, this was such a simple equation. You don't lose Nick Saban and get better. And Nick Saban had 3 back-to-back 2-loss seasons. So what does that mean? It means a 3-loss season or maybe a 4-loss season.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That means you might not make a 12-team playoff. That was literally all my math. I'd love to tell you I'm some great prognosticator of prognosticators, but it was like
nobody saw him losing to Vandy, that's for sure.
Well, no. I'd love to tell you I predicted that. No, but it wasn't just that they lost 3 games; it was who they lost the 3 games to. Had they lost to Georgia, Ole Miss, and LSU, people would have let them off the hook. They didn't. They lost to 2 teams they should have never lost to, and that's when you knew Nick Saban was gone. Anyway, and now you see that with they got a 5-star wide receiver that's entered the portal, a 5-star running back that's entered the portal, and
Caleb Odom was the receiver, right?
Yeah, 6'5", huge target. I don't know much about him. I never saw him much this year, honestly. But what you see is a difference in culture with Bama, and they're hitting that reality right now. It's so funny. We never insulted Alabama. We just said it's going to be a harder time this year, and they were hugely offended.
Yes, they were offended
by that notion.
Just the condescending responses we got, little bro, kind of thing.
Little bro, you just jealous. Kirby copies everything Saban does. Well, why doesn't DeBoer copy what Saban does? Because DeBoer has ripped this team apart. They're transferring. They've lost 3 games, which, by the way, isn't all that bad. It's just all that bad at Alabama. Mm-hmm. And honestly, they could have lost 5 games this year. And so that type of thing, you're going to see the luster. You can see it on Twitter right now, right? The same guys that were defending this is the greatest coaching staff ever put together in the history of football to follow a legend like Saban. They're calling for his head. They've got all these loser and I don't know, all these different little, ways to make fun of his name. And they're basically joining the dog show right now. And what we saw from the very beginning, you don't lose Nick Saban and get better. And here it is. And that's not a bad thing. You're still awesome. But that's not enough in Tuscaloosa. And the truth is really sitting sour right now.
Yeah, that's all I always say. Get used to being like most teams. And they kind of have to deal with that because you don't just turn over your whole coaching staff and just pick right up where the last coach left off. If you follow any level of football, even talented teams experience that because there's going to be turnover. Important players will turn over. Just that culture has a chance to take hold if you can even produce it. There's no guarantees that DeBoer can produce it. They're not happy with their coordinators. And every team is losing players to the portal, but it just feels like Alabama's lost them. Once you saw Caleb Downs go in the offseason, like, what's happening here? And excuse me, but we called it. We saw it coming, and they were, like you said, a hair away from losing to Georgia, hair away from losing to Georgia and South Carolina.
Right.
Think about that. They were close to losing 5 games. And the Oklahoma
That's
game
right.
wasn't close. Tennessee
No.
ended up winning pretty easily. And then Vanderbilt controlled that whole game. So it wasn't like they got robbed in any of those games.
Right.
They were a 3-loss team, and they were lucky to be a 3-loss team.
So well said.
And it's not saying that we like Alabama to be a good team. We don't want them to go back looking like Auburn. But when we picked at them, we was like, you need to focus more on Auburn, even though Alabama found a way and to beat Georgia. We've had who was it saying the other day? I think one of the coaches saying, or maybe it was one in the show, the shows after the games last weekend. So it's easy to get up. You can get up. You can get your players up for 1 game. You can get them up for 2 games. But when you play in the SEC, it's a weekly mental grind and physical grind that is hard. It's hard to do. You can pick out that 1 or 2 games where everybody is focused, laser focused, and your preparation is awesome. And you come out like they did against Georgia, and Georgia has a buzzsaw. There's a buzzsaw waiting for them in that first quarter. And that can happen. Georgia Tech, same thing. They wanted to beat Georgia so bad. They were so focused on that game. They gave you the best game.
They
People
did.
trying to discredit Georgia. You almost lost to Georgia Tech. Did you watch that game? If you watch that game and not just the box score, you know that Georgia Tech in that situation beats 99% of people in college football.
Let me tell you something real quick. By the way, Georgia Tech, in terms of top 10 victories, Georgia Tech is in the top 5 of college football this year in top 10 victories. And had Georgia Tech beaten Georgia, they would have been number 1 in top 10 victories this year. That's not a team to mess around with. And so we'll take. You want to attach all this history to Georgia Tech that ain't this year. That's a different staff. That's different players. No, we'll take our victory over Tech, and we'll be proud of it.
We'll take 8 overtimes and find a way to win a game.
Preach.
And that builds to what you are as a team, that you're not going to – you just don't blink. You just keep playing football. And Georgia's going to do that. We've seen it time and time again. And that's really all I have, Smooch. I'm glad to kick Alabama around a little longer, and there's some other teams probably I won't mind kicking. There's going to be some upsets in the first couple rounds that we can enjoy. Hopefully it won't be Georgia. I think Georgia matches up well with most teams. And people are saying, well, I'm worried about Notre Dame. They got a running quarterback. They are not big on the lines of scrimmage.
No.
And Georgia's got 3 weeks to come up with a game plan and be ready to play those guys.
I honestly, and I'm dead serious when I'm about to say.
If it's Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think Georgia Tech would beat Notre Dame. So I feel good about Georgia against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I do too. Not an explosive team, and not a defensive, not a team that stops the run. And Georgia is going to out physical anybody they play, I think, at this point.
Amen. Yep.
But we'll be back. A kind of short show tonight because there's no football going on. And we are happy to be SEC champions, 11-2.
SEC champs, man. Come on.
And we'll talk more. I think maybe we'll talk more about Notre Dame next week. There might be some teams that we can do a delusional fan alert next week. I'm looking forward to that. But you guys enjoy the holiday season. Enjoy your family. And we are enjoying this cold weather. We might we talking about here in Middle Georgia, maybe snow for Christmas. That's a possibility.
Come on, man.
And so we're looking forward to all those things. But anything else, Smooch, as we wrap it up?
Man, I love it. You know, we'll jump on when the playoffs start. We'll do something next week, and then we'll jump on when the playoffs start and have a blast with it. But, you know, honestly, I can't decide what I want in that Indiana Notre Dame game. There's a part of me that says I want to shut the Indiana nonsense up, but there's another part of me that says, oh, please give us Notre Dame on a national stage. So it's win-win for the dogs. Let's go have some fun.
Because the media will find a way to pick Notre Dame over Georgia or to give them false hope, and we love that part because that's happened so many times in the Kirby Smart era. Yeah. We relish that. So come right on. We love it. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Dog Show for Smooch Moncrief. This is Troop Brinson. So long. We'll see you soon.
This is the Dog Show with Troop and Smooch.
It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show.